The old man collapsed on the hot highway asphalt just as the last naira left Hannah's trembling fingers. Cars screeched, horns blared, dust rose into the air. People shouted, some stepping back in fear, others rushing forward in confusion. The plastic bowl the beggar used for alms rolled across the road, spinning wildly before stopping near Hannah's worn slippers. Hannah stood frozen. Only seconds earlier she had pressed her final crumpled notes into the palm of the poor old beggar who sat beside the highway every day. The same man people passed without looking, the same man children mocked, the same man drivers warned each other about. Now he lay motionless, his thin chest barely rising. "Hannah, move back," someone yelled. But Hannah could not move. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the noise of the road. Sweat rolled down her caramel skin as fear wrapped tightly around her chest. She dropped to her knees beside the old man, ignoring the heat of the road burning through her dress. "Baba, Baba, please," she whispered, shaking him gently. No response. A dark thought flashed through her mind like lightning. What if he dies? What if my kindness killed him instead of saving him? Suddenly the old man's eyes fluttered open. But what Hannah saw in them made her breath catch. There was no confusion, no weakness. Instead, there was clarity, sharp awareness, and something else, something heavy, powerful, and unsettling. He stared straight at Hannah, his gaze locking onto hers, and in a weak but steady voice, he whispered words that would change her life forever. "Child, you must not leave me." Before Hannah could speak, a black luxury SUV screeched to a halt on the highway, drawing gasps from the crowd. Men in suits jumped out, and the world Hannah thought she knew began to crack. Hours earlier, Hannah's day had begun the same way most of her days did, quiet, heavy, and uncertain. At 22 years old, Hannah had learned early that life did not make room for orphans to dream too loudly. Her parents had died when she was still a child, leaving her in the care of distant relatives who treated her more like a burden than family. When they finally sent her away at 18, she packed her few clothes in a nylon bag and never looked back. She survived by doing small jobs, cleaning houses, selling fruit by the roadside, washing clothes for people who barely remembered her name. Some days she ate well, many days she did not. That morning, Hannah counted the money in her palm under the dim light of her small rented room. It was not much. Enough to buy Gary and maybe a little soup, enough to last her until she found another day's work. She closed her fingers around the money and sighed. "God," she whispered, looking up at the cracked ceiling, "thank you for today, please don't forget me." She always said that prayer, and every day she hoped. When Hannah stepped onto the busy road later that afternoon, the sun was unforgiving. Heat shimmered on the asphalt as buses roared past, carrying people with places to go and people waiting for them. Hannah balanced a small tray of fruits on her head, calling out softly to passing drivers. That was when she saw him. The old beggar sat on his usual spot beside the highway, leaning against a broken concrete barrier. His clothes were torn and dusty, his beard long and gray, his slippers worn thin. Most people believed he was mad, others believed he was cursed. Hannah knew only one thing: he was human. She had seen him there every day for months, rain or shine, hunger or heat, and no matter how many times she passed, she could never ignore him. Today something felt different. The old man looked weaker than usual. His head drooped forward, his hands trembling as he held out his bowl. His lips moved silently as though he was praying. Hannah slowed her steps. Her stomach tightened. She thought about her empty room, her hunger, her uncertain tomorrow. Then she remembered her mother's voice from long ago, gentle and firm. "Even when you have little, Hannah, give what you can. God sees the heart." Hannah stopped walking. She lowered the tray from her head and stared at the money in her hand, the last money she had. Her chest ached as she battled with herself. "If I give this," she whispered, "what will I eat tonight?" The old man lifted his eyes, not begging with words but with quiet dignity. He did not stretch his hand further, he did not cry out. He only looked. That was enough. Hannah knelt before him, ignoring the stares of passers-by. She placed the money gently into his bowl, then added a small apple from her tray. "Please, Baba," she said softly, "use this to rest today." The old man stared at the money, then at Hannah, as though he could not believe what he was seeing. "You have little," he said weakly, "why give me everything?" Hannah smiled, though her eyes shone with unshed tears. "Because someone once told me God never forgets kindness." The old man's lips trembled. He reached out, gripping Hannah's wrist with surprising strength. "May heaven remember you," he whispered. Then he collapsed. That moment brought Hannah back to the present, the highway, the shouting, the fear, the sirens approaching in the distance. As the black SUV doors slammed shut and the suited men rushed toward them, Hannah felt the old man squeeze her hand again. "Do not be afraid," he murmured, "you have passed the test." "What test?" Hannah asked, her voice shaking. Before he could answer, one of the men in a suit knelt beside them and said in a low, urgent voice, "Sir, the doctors said you shouldn't be here." Hannah's heart skipped. "Sir?" The old beggar slowly turned his head toward the man, then back to Hannah. And with a faint smile, he whispered words that made the ground feel unsteady beneath her knees. "My child, my time is almost over, and everything I have may soon become yours." Hannah stared at him in disbelief as the crowd closed in and the sirens grew louder. She did not yet know who he truly was. She did not yet know what he had. But she knew deep in her soul that her life would never be the same again. And as the SUV doors opened wide, ready to carry the old man away, Hannah felt fear and destiny collide, right there on the highway. The question was no longer whether kindness mattered. The question was what price it would demand next. The black SUV swallowed the old man, and the noise of the highway faded behind its tinted windows. Hannah stood at the edge of the road, her hands shaking, her heart racing, unsure whether to follow or run. People around her whispered loudly now, some pointed, others shook their heads in disbelief. "Did you see that car? That beggar? Something is not right." One of the men in suits turned back toward Hannah. He was tall, clean-shaven, and spoke with calm authority. "You," he said gently, "come with us." Fear shot through Hannah's body. "Me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't do anything." "We know," the man replied, "that's why you must come." Hannah hesitated. Every instinct she had told her to be careful. Life had taught her that nothing good came easily, especially for someone like her, but as she looked into the open SUV, she saw the old man watching her. His eyes were weak now, but they still held that strange certainty. "Please," he said faintly, "do not abandon me." Hannah swallowed hard. She nodded. Inside the SUV, the air was cool and smelled expensive, nothing like the dust and sweat of the roadside. Hannah sat stiffly at the edge of the seat, clutching her dress, while the old man lay stretched across the leather seats, oxygen placed gently beneath his nose. As the vehicle moved, one of the men spoke into a phone. "Yes, doctor, we're bringing him in now." "Doctor?" Hannah's chest tightened. She turned toward the old man. "Baba, are you sick?" He smiled weakly. "Very." She wanted to ask more, but the words refused to come. Her mind felt overwhelmed. Just hours ago, her biggest worry had been her next meal. Now she was riding in a luxury vehicle beside a man surrounded by guards and doctors. The SUV pulled into a private hospital far from the noise of the city. Tall gates opened quietly and nurses rushed forward with a stretcher before the car had fully stopped. "Sir, please," one nurse said, "we need to move you now." As they lifted the old man, his hand shot out, gripping Hannah's fingers tightly. "She comes," he insisted. "Where I go, she goes." The nurses hesitated, looking toward the suited men. It's okay, one of them said, let her stay. Hannah followed them down long white corridors, her slippers echoing against polished floors. People stared at her simple dress, her tired face, her confused eyes. She did not belong here. Inside the hospital room, machines beeped softly as doctors moved quickly around the old man. Hannah stood in the corner, feeling invisible and exposed at the same time. A man with silver hair and kind eyes approached her. "My name is Dr. Wilson," he said. "You're the young woman from the road." "Yes, sir," Hannah replied, lowering her head. "You did something rare today," the doctor said. "You showed compassion without knowing who you were helping." Hannah frowned. "Please, sir, who is he?" The doctor hesitated. Before he could answer, the old man spoke weakly from the bed. "Leave us," he said to the others, "all of you." There was a moment of silence. Then slowly the room cleared until only Hannah and the old man remained. He turned his head toward her, studying her face carefully. "You are afraid," he said softly. "Yes," Hannah admitted, "I don't understand what is happening." He sighed deeply. "I am not what I appear to be." Hannah nodded. "I know." A faint smile crossed his lips. "My name is Elijah Moore." The name meant nothing to Hannah. But it meant everything to the world outside that room. "I have no children," Elijah continued. "No wife, no one who loves me for who I am." Hannah's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, Baba." "I am dying," he said simply. "A tumor in my brain. The doctors say I have little time left." Hannah felt tears sting her eyes. God can still do miracles. Elijah smiled. "I believe that, but I also believe God prepares people for endings." He shifted slightly, wincing in pain. "For years I have watched people, tested hearts, observed actions. I wanted someone disciplined, God-fearing, selfless, someone who would not bow to greed." Hannah shook her head slowly. "I don't understand why you're telling me this." "Because today," Elijah said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you gave your last money without knowing who I was." Hannah's throat tightened. "I only did what felt right." "That is why," Elijah said, "you matter." A knock interrupted them. A woman stepped inside the room, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She was well dressed, confident, and her eyes were cold. "Elijah," she said sharply, "what is this nonsense I'm hearing?" Elijah's expression changed. Hannah instinctively took a step back. "Who is she?" the woman demanded, staring directly at Hannah. Before Elijah could answer, the woman's lips curved into a thin smile. "You wouldn't happen to be planning something foolish, would you?" she said. Elijah closed his eyes briefly. Hannah's heart sank. Something told her this woman was dangerous. In whatever Elijah planned, someone was already trying to stop it. The woman's stare burned into Hannah like the midday sun on the highway. "Answer me," the woman said again, folding her arms. "Who is she?" Elijah opened his eyes slowly. "Her name is Hannah." "And why," the woman asked sharply, "is a roadside girl sitting in your hospital room while the rest of us are kept outside?" Hannah's fingers curled into her dress. She wanted to disappear. "She saved my life today," Elijah replied calmly. The woman let out a dry laugh. "Saved your life, Elijah? She's a beggar herself." Hannah flinched, but Elijah's voice hardened. "Do not insult her." Silence fell. The woman studied Elijah carefully, then glanced back at Hannah with a look that mixed curiosity and suspicion. "I'm Patricia Moore," she said flatly, "Elijah's niece." Hannah lowered her head respectfully. "Good afternoon, Ma." Patricia ignored her greeting. "Uncle, you are not thinking clearly. Your condition." "My condition," Elijah interrupted, "has given me clarity." Patricia's jaw tightened. "I hope you're not suggesting what I think you are." Elijah said nothing. That silence spoke louder than words. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "You can't be serious." "I am," Elijah replied. Hannah's heart pounded. "Please, Baba," she whispered, "I don't want trouble." Elijah reached for her hand. Trouble comes whether you invite it or not. Patricia stepped forward. You think giving charity makes her worthy of your estate? Do you know how many people would pretend to be kind for that kind of money? Hannah shook her head quickly. Ma, I didn't know anything, I didn't even know his name. Patricia laughed again, louder this time. That's what they all say. Elijah's voice rose, sharp despite his weakness. Enough. Patricia froze. I have watched people all my life, Elijah continued. Rich men cheat, poor men envy, religious men pretend, but today I watched this girl give away her last money. Patricia crossed her arms tighter. And you think that makes her special? Yes. Patricia scoffed, you're being emotional. I am being deliberate, Elijah replied. He turned to Hannah. Child, tell me, why did you give me everything you had? Hannah swallowed hard. Because I know what it feels like to be alone. The room grew quiet. I don't have parents, Hannah continued softly. I don't have anyone waiting for me at home. I didn't want you to feel invisible. Elijah closed his eyes, tears slipping from the corners. Patricia looked away briefly, uncomfortable, then regained her composure. This is ridiculous, she said. Uncle, I will speak to your lawyer. Elijah nodded. Please do. Patricia's heels clicked angrily as she turned and left the room. The door closed with a heavy thud. Hannah exhaled shakily. I think I caused problems. You revealed them, Elijah corrected. People show their true faces when they fear loss. Moments later, Elijah's lawyer arrived, a calm, middle-aged man named Mr. Grant. He greeted Elijah respectfully, then turned to Hannah with professional curiosity. Elijah has informed me of his intentions, Mr. Grant said. Before anything proceeds, we must ensure everything is done legally and ethically. Hannah shook her head immediately. Sir, I don't want anything. Mr. Grant raised an eyebrow. You may not get a choice. Elijah nodded slowly. I want her tested. Hannah's heart skipped. Tested. Yes, Elijah said, not for intelligence, for character. Mr. Grant scribbled notes. What kind of test? Remove her comfort, Elijah replied. Observe her when she thinks nothing will come of it. Hannah felt a chill. I don't understand. You don't need to, Elijah said gently. Just remain who you are. Later that evening, Hannah was given a small room within the hospital compound. A nurse brought her food, but Hannah barely touched it. Her mind replayed Patricia's words again and again. Roadside girl. She knelt by the bed and prayed quietly. God, she whispered, I didn't ask for this, please protect me. The next morning, Hannah woke to raised voices outside her door. She must leave, Patricia snapped. This is manipulation. I disagree, Mr. Grant replied calmly. Patricia's voice dropped. Then watch closely, because if she's pretending, I'll expose her. Hannah sat up in bed, her heart racing. She had no idea what test awaited her. But somewhere deep inside, she sensed that her greatest trial had just begun. If this story is touching your heart so far, this is a good moment to pause and reflect. Would you have given your last money like Hannah did without knowing who you were helping? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you're enjoying the story, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes kindness still matters. And tell us, where are you watching from today? Hannah left the hospital compound before sunrise. No one stopped her, no one questioned her. A nurse simply handed her a small envelope with transport money and a quiet instruction from Mr. Grant, go back to your normal life. Normal life. The words felt strange. The city was still half asleep as Hannah walked toward the bus stop, her slippers slapping softly against the pavement. Morning air brushed her face, cool and uncertain like the future she was stepping into. She did not know this was part of a test. She only knew she was alone again. The bus dropped her near the crowded area where she usually found work. Women were already setting up stalls, shouting prices, laughing loudly as though life was simple. Hannah blended into the noise, lifting crates, washing vegetables, doing whatever small job was offered. By midday, her hands ached and her stomach growled. She earned little. Still, she did not complain. When evening came, Hannah returned to her small room, changed her clothes, and knelt to pray. God, she whispered, whatever is happening, help me stay clean in heart. She did not know that two men were watching her from a distance. They observed as she shared a loaf of bread with a street boy outside her building. They noted how she returned excess change to a customer who overpaid. They listened when she refused a man's offer of money in exchange for company. She's consistent, one of the men murmured into his phone. Back at the hospital, Elijah listened quietly as reports were delivered to him daily. No unusual behavior, Mr. Grant said. No sudden spending, no questions about inheritance. Elijah nodded slowly. Good, he replied, continue. Patricia, however, was growing impatient. She's playing the long game, she said sharply during a private meeting. You're being fooled. Elijah looked at her calmly. If she is pretending, time will expose her. Patricia leaned forward, and if she's not? Elijah's gaze hardened. Then you must learn to accept what God chooses. Patricia said nothing, but her silence was heavy with resentment. 3 days later, Elijah was rushed into surgery. The tumor had worsened suddenly. Doctors worked through the night, their faces tense, voices clipped with urgency. When dawn broke, Elijah was alive but weaker than ever. The window is closing, Dr. Wilson said quietly. You must prepare. Elijah closed his eyes. Bring Hannah back, he said. Mr. Grant hesitated. Sir, are you certain? Yes, Elijah replied, before it's too late. When the call came, Hannah was scrubbing clothes by hand behind a neighbor's house. Miss Hannah, the voice said politely, please come with us. Fear returned instantly. Had she done something wrong? The SUV felt just as unreal as before. When she entered Elijah's room again, the sight broke her heart. Tubes, machines, weakness carved into his face. You came, Elijah said softly. Yes, Baba, Hannah replied, kneeling beside the bed. I have watched you, he said. You did not change. Hannah frowned. Change how? Elijah smiled faintly. Power reveals who we are. You had none and still chose good. He reached beneath his pillow and pulled out a small folded document. This is my will, he said. Hannah's breath caught. Please don't talk like that. I must, Elijah replied. Time is honest. He motioned for Mr. Grant to step forward. Hannah, Elijah continued, I am not giving you wealth yet, I am giving you responsibility. Mr. Grant handed her a sealed envelope. This, Elijah said, contains temporary authority over one of my foundations. You will manage food distribution for the poor for 30 days. Hannah stared at the envelope as if it might burn her hands. Me, she whispered, I don't know how to do these things. You know hunger, Elijah said, that is enough to start. Patricia laughed bitterly from the corner. This is madness. Elijah turned to her. No, this is wisdom. Hannah looked up slowly. Baba, what if I fail? Elijah squeezed her hand weakly. Then you will fail honestly, and that is better than succeeding with corruption. Hannah nodded, tears filling her eyes. She did not see the trap forming. She did not see the people waiting for her to make a mistake. She only saw a chance to serve. And that choice would soon place her directly in the path of danger she never imagined. The first day Hannah stepped into the foundation office, the room went quiet. Men and women in neat clothes paused mid-conversation. Some stared openly, others whispered behind their hands. Hannah felt their eyes move over her simple dress, her worn sandals, her tightly braided hair. She did not look like authority. She looked like someone who had wandered in by mistake. A tall woman with sharp glasses cleared her throat. You're Hannah. Yes, Hannah replied politely. The woman exchanged glances with the others. I'm Mrs. Carter, operations manager. We weren't informed you'd be this young. Hannah nodded, neither was I. A few people chuckled softly, not kindly. Mrs. Carter gestured toward a chair. Please sit, we have a lot to discuss. As Hannah listened, words like budget, logistics, and distribution points flew over her head. She felt small, unqualified, afraid. But she remembered Elijah's words. You know hunger. When it was her turn to speak, Hannah stood. I may not know big grammar, she said quietly, but I know what it means to sleep hungry. If we're feeding people, we start with the ones nobody sees. The room fell silent again. Mrs. Carter leaned back slowly. And who would those be? Widows, Hannah said, street children, old people who can't stand in long lines, the ones too ashamed to beg. Something shifted. Not everyone agreed, but no one could argue with her sincerity. Within days, food distribution began. Hannah woke before dawn, traveled to rough neighborhoods, and insisted on going herself. She carried bags, she listened to stories, she knelt beside the sick and prayed with them when they asked. People began to talk. She's different. She doesn't steal. She eats the same food she gives us. But where there is light, shadows grow restless. One afternoon, a man named Victor approached Hannah privately. He was smooth-spoken, well-dressed, and always smiling. You're doing great work, he said, but you could do more if you let us help. Hannah frowned. Help how? He lowered his voice. There are donations that don't need full documentation, a little flexibility, everyone wins. Hannah's stomach tightened. I don't understand. Victor smiled wider. You will. That night Hannah could not sleep. She knelt on the floor of her room and prayed again. God, please don't let me disappoint you. The next day Hannah called a meeting. No shortcuts, she said firmly. Every grain must be accounted for. Victor's smile faded. Patricia heard about it immediately. So she's acting righteous now, she said coldly. Fine, let's see how long that lasts. Pressure increased. Suppliers delayed deliveries, false complaints reached the office, rumors spread that Hannah was incompetent. One evening, Hannah returned home exhausted to find an envelope pushed under her door. Inside was cash. A lot of it. No note. Her heart pounded as she stared at it. This money could change everything: rent, food, security. She thought of her empty childhood, her hunger, her fear. Then she remembered the highway, the old man, the last naira she gave away. Hannah stood up, carried the envelope straight back to the office, and placed it on Mrs. Carter's desk. I don't know who sent this, she said, but it doesn't belong to me. Mrs. Carter looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled for the first time. You passed, she said softly. That night Elijah received the report. He closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. She is the one, he whispered. But Patricia was not done. She made a call. If honesty won't break her, she said, then desperation will. And far away, Hannah felt a strange chill she could not explain. Her greatest test was still ahead. The trouble came quietly. At first it was small things: delays in food trucks, missing records, sudden inspections. Hannah handled each one calmly, refusing to panic. She worked longer hours, slept less, and prayed more. Then one morning, everything collapsed at once. Armed officials stormed into the foundation office. Freeze, nobody move. Hannah dropped the box of supplies she was carrying, shock freezing her feet to the floor. What is happening? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear pounding in her chest. You're under investigation for misappropriation of funds, one officer said coldly. We have reports of illegal diversion of food and money. Gasps filled the room. Mrs. Carter spun toward Hannah. What? Hannah shook her head slowly. This is not true. Victor stood at the back of the room, his face carefully blank. Hannah noticed him immediately. Something inside her tightened. She was taken in for questioning. The room was cold, bright lights, endless questions. Where did this money go? Why are these signatures missing? Why did food supplies not reach these locations? Hannah answered everything honestly. I don't know. I didn't take anything. I check every record. Hours passed. Finally, an officer leaned back in his chair. Someone very powerful is pushing this case. Hannah swallowed. I don't have enemies. The officer studied her quietly. Everyone has enemies when money is involved. That night, Hannah was released but suspended from her role pending investigation. Her world went silent. When she returned to her room, neighbors avoided her eyes. Whispers followed her footsteps. She stole money. See, I knew it. Poor people always show their true colors. Hannah locked herself inside and slid to the floor. For the first time since everything began, she cried openly. God, she whispered brokenly, I don't understand, I did everything right. Days passed. No money came in, work offers disappeared, hunger returned familiar, sharp, unforgiving. One evening, Hannah found a bag of groceries at her door. No note. She looked around but saw no one. She smiled sadly. Thank you, she whispered, unsure if she was speaking to God or a stranger. At the hospital, Elijah's condition worsened. They've moved against her, Patricia said calmly, standing beside his bed, just as you predicted. Elijah's eyes burned with anger. You orchestrated this. Patricia didn't deny it. I protected the family. You betrayed it, Elijah replied weakly. She's a nobody, Patricia said. You're risking everything for a stranger. Elijah turned his face away. She is not a stranger to God. Mr. Grant entered the room quietly. Sir, we've traced the false reports. Patricia stiffened. They lead back to Victor, Mr. Grant continued, and through him to someone higher. Elijah's gaze returned to Patricia. Silence stretched. You taught me well once, Elijah said softly, but you forgot the most important lesson. Patricia's voice trembled. You're choosing her over blood. I'm choosing truth, Elijah said. He closed his eyes briefly, pain crossing his face. Bring Hannah to me, he said, now. When the SUV stopped outside Hannah's building, she hesitated. I don't want trouble, she said quietly. You are the trouble, the driver replied gently, and the solution. At the hospital, Hannah stood beside Elijah's bed again, thinner now, tired but unchanged. I failed, she whispered. Everything fell apart. Elijah smiled weakly. No, everything revealed itself. He took her hand. You were hungry again and you still did not steal. Tears rolled down Hannah's cheeks. I'm scared, she admitted. So was I, Elijah said, before I learned to trust God's choices. He turned to Mr. Grant. Begin the final process. Patricia's face drained of color. Uncle. It's done, Elijah said firmly. Hannah looked between them, confused and afraid. What process? She asked. Elijah's eyes softened as he looked at her. The one that will change your life and end mine. Before the story continues, let's pause for a moment. If you were in Hannah's place, falsely accused, hungry again, and abandoned, would you still choose honesty? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story is moving you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes integrity matters, even when it hurts. The final process began quietly, without ceremony. No announcements, no cameras, no celebration. Just paperwork, signatures, and long conversations behind closed doors. Hannah sat in a small waiting room inside the hospital, her hands folded tightly on her lap. She felt out of place, like a child waiting to be punished for something she did not understand. Mr. Grant came in and sat across from her. You are not in trouble, he said calmly, as if reading her thoughts. Hannah nodded, though her heart still raced. Everyone keeps saying my life will change, I don't see how. Mr. Grant studied her for a moment. Most people don't see blessings when they arrive quietly. Inside Elijah's room, doctors adjusted machines while Patricia stood stiffly near the window. Her confidence was gone now, replaced by tension and fear. "You're really going through with this," she said. Elijah lay still, his breathing shallow. "Yes." "You will destroy the family name," Patricia said bitterly. "People will laugh." Elijah turned his head slowly toward her. "People laughed when I was poor, they bowed when I became rich. Let them do whatever they want." Patricia's voice cracked. "I stayed, I managed things, I protected you." "You protected wealth," Elijah replied gently, "not values." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "I forgave you long ago, but forgiveness does not cancel consequence." Patricia had no answer. Later that afternoon, Hannah was called in. She approached Elijah's bed slowly, afraid of what she might hear. "You look tired," Elijah said softly. "So do you," Hannah replied, forcing a small smile. He chuckled weakly. "Fair." Elijah gestured toward the chair beside him. "Sit." She obeyed. "I won't pretend this is easy," he continued. "You didn't ask for any of this." Hannah shook her head. "I just wanted to help you that day." "And you did," Elijah said, "more than you know." He paused, his face tightening as pain passed through him. "When my doctor told me I had a brain tumor," Elijah continued, "I became afraid, not of death, but of leaving everything I built in the wrong hands." Hannah listened silently. "I prayed," he said, "not for healing but for direction." He turned his gaze fully toward her. "Then I met you." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not special." Elijah smiled. "That's exactly why you are." Mr. Grant entered the room with documents in hand. "Everything is ready." Elijah nodded. "Read it aloud." Mr. Grant cleared his throat. "Effective immediately, Hannah Brooks is appointed sole heir and trustee of Elijah Moore's estate, including all businesses, properties, and charitable foundations under ethical oversight guidelines." Hannah's breath caught painfully. "What?" she whispered. Her hands trembled. "No, no, this is too much." Elijah squeezed her hand weakly. "You will not be alone, advisors will guide you, but the heart must be yours." Hannah stood abruptly. "Baba, I can't, people already hate me, they think I'm a thief." "They thought the same of me once," Elijah said softly. "Truth does not need popularity to survive." Tears streamed down Hannah's face. "Why me?" Elijah's eyes glistened. "Because when you had nothing, you gave everything." Silence filled the room. In that moment, Hannah understood something she had never been taught before, that God sometimes answers prayers in ways that frighten us first. Outside the room, word began to spread. Phones buzzed, whispers turned into gasps. "Did you hear? The beggar girls. She's inherited everything." Shock rippled through Elijah's inner circle. Some were angry, others confused, a few were quietly ashamed. Patricia locked herself in her office, staring at the wall. "I underestimated her," she whispered. As evening fell, Elijah's condition worsened rapidly. Doctors rushed in and out, machines beeped faster. Hannah refused to leave his side. "Please rest," a nurse urged. Hannah shook her head. He stayed when no one else did. Elijah opened his eyes one last time and looked at her. "Do not let bitterness change you," he whispered. "Wealth tests the soul harder than poverty." "I promise," Hannah said through tears. Elijah smiled faintly. "Then my life was not wasted." His breathing slowed, then stopped. The room fell silent. Hannah bowed her head, grief and responsibility crashing over her at once. By morning, the world would know her name. But tonight, she was still the orphan girl who gave her last money to a stranger on the highway. And tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same again. The news broke at dawn. By the time the sun rose fully over the city, Hannah's name was everywhere, on radios, on phones, whispered in markets and shouted in offices. Billionaire Elijah Moore leaves entire estate to unknown orphan girl. Highway beggar revealed to be one of the richest men in the country. Kindness changes destiny. Hannah did not hear any of it at first. She sat alone in a quiet room at the hospital, staring at her hands. The same hands that once held her last money. The same hands that now carried a weight she could barely understand. Elijah Moore was gone, and the world he left behind had turned its eyes toward her. By mid-morning, the gates of the hospital were crowded with reporters. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions. "Hannah, how do you feel? Did you know who he was? Are the rumors true?" Mr. Grant shielded her as they moved through a private exit. "You don't owe anyone explanations today," he said gently. "But they hate me," Hannah whispered. "They think I planned this." "Some will," Mr. Grant replied. "Some always do." The first official meeting took place 2 days later. Hannah sat at the head of a long table surrounded by people in expensive suits. Her simple dress stood out sharply against polished shoes and silk ties. Patricia was there. She did not look at Hannah at first. Mr. Grant read aloud the legal confirmation of the will. Every word echoed heavily in the room. When he finished, silence followed. Finally, Patricia spoke. "You've won," she said flatly, lifting her eyes to Hannah. "Are you satisfied?" Hannah's chest tightened. She stood slowly. "I didn't win anything," she said quietly. "Someone died." Patricia frowned, caught off guard. "I didn't ask for this," Hannah continued. "I didn't know who he was. I only knew he was hungry and alone." Murmurs spread through the room. Hannah looked around, her voice steady now. "If this money makes me forget that, then I don't deserve it." She turned to Mr. Grant. "I want Elijah's foundations expanded, more food, more scholarships, more shelters." One man scoffed. "You'll burn through the estate." Hannah shook her head. "Wealth that saves lives is not wasted." For the first time, Patricia studied Hannah differently. Later that day, Hannah returned to the highway. No cameras, no guards. She stood beside the broken concrete barrier where everything had begun. Cars rushed past just as they had before. Life moved on. She knelt and placed a small plaque there. "Kindness is never wasted." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. Weeks passed. Investigations cleared Hannah's name completely. Victor was arrested. Patricia quietly stepped away from management roles. Some people apologized, others remained silent. Hannah did not chase approval. She focused on work. She moved into a modest home near the city, refusing a mansion. She kept her habits simple. She visited distribution centers personally. She listened more than she spoke. One afternoon, a young girl approached her at a food center. "Auntie," the girl asked shyly, "are you rich?" Hannah knelt and smiled. "I have enough." The girl grinned. "I want to be like you." Hannah hugged her gently. "Then be kind first." At night, Hannah still prayed in the same way she always had. "God," she whispered, "help me not to forget who I was." And each time peace followed. Months later, at a small ceremony, a new scholarship program was announced, the Elijah Moore Legacy for Orphans. Hannah stood quietly at the back, watching as children received opportunities she never had. Someone asked her softly, "Do you ever wish you hadn't stopped that day?" Hannah looked toward the horizon. "No," she said, "I only wish more people would stop." The orphan girl was no longer lonely. But she remained disciplined, God-fearing, grounded. And in a world chasing wealth, she proved something rare, that true riches begin with the heart. Before we close, let's reflect together. What would you have done if you were Hannah? Give your last money or walk away? Have you ever seen kindness change a life in an unexpected way? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes small acts can create great destinies.